The day I walked away from a 7-figure career started like any other, with me failing someone I loved. Again. My father's doctor had called at dawn, his voice carefully measured as he described the experimental treatment. "It's our best option now, Mr. Park. But we need you here to authorize it." Tuesday morning. Tuesday, the exact day the Richardson merger was scheduled to finalize. 3 years of work, countless all-nighters, the partnership that awaited me just beyond the horizon, all culminating in a meeting I couldn't miss. Or so I thought. Absolutely not, Daniel. The board meeting is in 3 days, and the Richardson merger documents need your final review. Marcus Chen's voice cut through the office like a blade, his titanium watch catching the afternoon light as he gestured dismissively. I stood before his glass desk, medical leave request in hand, feeling my shoulders tense. "Mr. Chen, it's my father. The doctors are saying this might be our last chance to." "Your father has been dying for months," Marcus interrupted, his expression unchanged. "Somehow the company has managed to continue functioning during your frequent absences." The words stung more than they should have. My father, once the picture of health, had been declining steadily since his stroke 8 months ago. Every medical leave request had become increasingly difficult to obtain, with Marcus growing more impatient each time. "This is different," I said, keeping my voice steady. "The experimental treatment starts Tuesday. If I'm not there to authorize it and something goes wrong, then perhaps your sister could handle it? Or one of your many cousins." Marcus leaned back in his ergonomic chair, fingers steepled. "We're in the final stages of the biggest merger in this firm's history. Your father was a businessman. He would understand priorities." I felt something shift inside me. My father was a businessman who never missed a single family dinner in 30 years of running his company. He would absolutely not understand. Marcus's eyes narrowed. "Careful, Daniel. I've been very accommodating, but my patience has limits." 3 days, I said firmly. "I'll have my phone. I'll review the documents remotely. I just need to be physically present for my father. The Richardson family is flying in specifically to meet our entire executive team." Marcus stood, his 6'3" frame imposing by design. "Your absence would be noticed, and in this business, appearances matter." The answer is no. I looked down at the leave request in my hands, then at the photo on my desk visible through the glass wall of Marcus's office. My father and me at my law school graduation, both beaming with pride. Then I quit. The words left my mouth before I fully processed them. But once spoken, I felt an unexpected wave of relief. Marcus actually laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Don't be dramatic, Daniel. No one quits Thornwick and Chen over family matters." I placed my company badge on his desk. "I just did." "You're throwing away a partnership track," Marcus said, his amusement fading. "For what? To hold your father's hand? He's going to die whether you're there or not." I shouldered my bag, suddenly eager to be anywhere but there. "That's the point, Marcus. He's going to die, and I'm going to be there. Some things aren't negotiable." "Walk out that door, and don't bother asking for a reference," Marcus called after me, his voice rising. "In fact, I'll personally make sure every law firm in the city knows about your priorities." I turned back one last time. "Thank you for clarifying mine." I cleared my desk in less than 10 minutes, taking only my personal items and leaving behind the expensive fountain pen Marcus had given me when I made senior associate. Rachel from Human Resources hovered nearby, clearly uncomfortable. "I'm sorry, Daniel," she whispered as I packed my framed diplomas. "You know how he gets during big deals." "I do," I agreed, not looking up. "That's why I can't stay." The elevator ride to the lobby felt like descending from one world into another. Outside the gleaming skyscraper that had consumed the last 7 years of my life, the spring air felt startlingly fresh. I loosened my tie, hailed a cab, and gave the driver my father's address. My father's home, my childhood home, sat on a quiet street lined with oak trees just beginning to show their spring leaves. It was modest compared to what many of his colleagues owned, but he had always said a bigger house just meant more rooms to clean. What mattered was filling the space you had with things that mattered. Mrs. Abernathy, the home health nurse, opened the door before I could use my key. "Daniel, we weren't expecting you until the weekend." Her kind face registered surprise, then concern. "Is everything all right?" "It is now," I said, setting down my box of office belongings. "How is he today?" "Lucid. He had a good morning. He's in the sunroom." I found my father in his wheelchair by the windows, a chessboard set up before him, playing against himself as sunlight streamed across the polished pieces. At 72, Howard Park still had a full head of silver hair and the straight posture of the federal judge he had once been. The stroke had weakened his left side and slurred his speech, but his mind remained razor sharp. Dad. He looked up, his face brightening. Daniel. What a surprise. Each word came deliberately, hard-won. No suit today. I glanced down, realizing I was still in my office clothes. Actually, I just left the office. At 2 in the afternoon, his right eyebrow rose, a familiar gesture from my childhood that usually preceded a lecture. I pulled up a chair across from him. I quit. My father's hand paused over a black knight. Thornwick and Chen. When I nodded, he asked simply, "Why?" "The Richardson merger is happening this week. Marcus wouldn't approve my leave for your treatment." Dad frowned. "So you quit a partnership track position at one of the top firms in the city?" "I did." "Good." His response caught me off guard. "Good." Marcus Chen, my father said carefully, each syllable precise, has been sacrificing other people's lives for his ambition since law school. I always wondered when you would notice. I stared at him. "You knew Marcus in law school? You never said anything when I took the job." "Some lessons," he replied with a small smile, "cannot be taught, only learned." He moved his knight, capturing a white pawn. "What will you do now?" "Be here for your treatment. Then, I don't know. Find another firm, maybe." My father studied the board. "Or you could open that legal aid clinic you talked about in law school, before Thornwick and Chen seduced you with their starting salary." I felt a flush of embarrassment that he remembered a dream I had all but forgotten. That was idealistic student talk. Was it? He gestured to a folder on the side table. "Open that." Inside was a deed to a small commercial building downtown, dated just 3 months ago, along with incorporation papers for Park Community Legal Services. "I don't understand." "I bought it after my diagnosis." He tapped his temple. "Stroke didn't affect my real estate instincts. Good location. Near the courthouse." "Dad, you can't just..." I trailed off, leafing through the documents with growing disbelief. "Can't just what?" "Spend my money how I please. I'm dying, Daniel. We both know it, even with this treatment." "You don't have that." I protested automatically. He fixed me with the same steady gaze that had assessed countless witnesses. "I was planning to tell you after the merger. I thought you deserved to finish what you started. But now," he gestured to the folder, "maybe it's time." I set the papers down, overwhelmed. "I don't know the first thing about running a legal aid clinic." "Nonsense. You've been doing pro bono work for years. Those immigrant cases, the tenant disputes." He moved another chess piece. "You think I don't read your emails? You've been reading my emails." "Mrs. Abernathy helps me with the computer." "Don't look so shocked. How else would I know what's happening in your life? You're always too busy to talk about work." The last phrase came with a knowing look. I couldn't argue with that. Our Sunday dinners had become increasingly brief, with me constantly checking my phone for emails from Marcus. "I always thought I'd have more time," I admitted quietly, "to figure out what I really wanted, to spend time with you, to do work that actually matters." "Time," my father said, his voice suddenly weaker, "is the one thing money cannot buy. Trust me, I've tried." He gestured to the chessboard. "Your move." The next morning, I drove my father to the hospital for his treatment. As we waited for the doctor, I scrolled through dozens of messages from former colleagues expressing shock at my departure. Some were supportive, others clearly fishing for gossip. Marcus had apparently told the office I'd had a breakdown due to personal stress. It was easier than admitting someone had chosen family over the firm. Dr. Mirza arrived with her team, explaining the experimental procedure one more time. The treatment was new, with promising results for stroke recovery, but not without risks. As my father's medical proxy, I needed to sign the final authorization. "Are you ready, Mr. Park?" she asked him. My father reached for my hand with his good one. "We both are." The procedure took 6 hours. I sat in the waiting room, alternating between researching legal aid clinic management on my laptop and fielding increasingly angry messages from Marcus about files I'd allegedly left unfinished. I blocked his number after the third threat of legal action. When Dr. Mirza finally emerged, her expression was cautiously optimistic. "The procedure went well. We won't know the full effects for a few days, but your father's vitals remained strong throughout. Recovery was slow but steady. By the end of the week, while the Richardson merger was dominating legal news headlines, my father was showing small improvements in his left side mobility. I spent days at the hospital and nights researching everything I needed to know about running a nonprofit legal service. 2 weeks later, I stood outside the building my father had purchased. It was a narrow 3-story structure sandwiched between a coffee shop and a bookstore, just 3 blocks from the county courthouse. The brick facade needed cleaning, and the interior required significant renovation, but I could see its potential. My phone rang. Rachel from HR. "Daniela, I thought you should know," she said without preamble. "The Richardson merger fell apart yesterday." "What? How?" "Their legal team found inconsistencies in the documentation. Marcus is blaming everyone, especially you. He's saying you sabotaged the deal by leaving critical sections unfinished." I had done no such thing, but Marcus would never admit to his own oversights. "I'm sorry for everyone there. I know how hard the team worked." "That's not all," Rachel continued, lowering her voice. "Judith Richardson specifically asked where you were. Apparently, her son is facing criminal charges in a DUI case. And she remembered you had criminal defense experience. She wanted you specifically." I leaned against the building, my building feeling a complex mix of emotions. "Did Marcus tell her I quit?" "He told her you were on temporary leave." "Daniel," Rachel hesitated. "A lot of us are reconsidering our positions here. The way he handled this, blaming everyone else." "There are other firms, Rachel, better ones. Or other options entirely," she replied. "I heard about your father's building. Rumors travel fast." After we hung up, I unlocked the front door and stepped inside my future. Dust motes danced in the shafts of light from the tall windows. The space was empty except for a single desk in the center with a note propped against an old brass lamp. "For when you're ready to make your own light, Dad." I set my bag down and pulled out my laptop. There was work to do. 6 months later, Park Community Legal Services opened its doors. My father sat beside me at the ribbon cutting. His mobility improved enough that he now used a cane instead of a wheelchair. The experimental treatment hadn't been a miracle cure, but it had given him back some independence and us more time. Our staff was small but committed. Myself, Rachel, who had indeed left Thornwick, and Chen, a recent law school graduate named Miguel who reminded me of myself before corporate law had narrowed my vision, and a paralegal named Diana who had previously worked at the public defender's office. Our first clients were primarily tenants facing eviction, immigrants navigating the complex legal system, and elderly residents dealing with predatory financial schemes. The work was demanding, the hours long, and the pay significantly less than what I had earned before. But each night, I went home tired in a way that felt right. The fatigue of meaningful work. 3 months after our opening, Judith Richardson walked through our door. "Mr. Park," she said, extending her hand. "I've been looking for you." I showed her to my modest office, a far cry from the corner view at Thornwick and Chen. "How can I help you, Mrs. Richardson?" My son's legal troubles were resolved, thankfully, she said, settling into the chair across from me. But it made me realize how quickly fortune can turn. My family has been blessed with considerable wealth, but not everyone has access to quality legal representation when they need it most. I nodded, uncertain where this was going. "The Richardson Foundation would like to establish an endowment," she continued, "for Park Community Legal Services, to ensure its continued operation and possible expansion." I stared at her, momentarily speechless. "That's extremely generous, Mrs. Richardson. May I ask why us specifically?" "We're very new." She smiled. "My father began as a legal aid attorney before building our family business. He never forgot those early days helping people who had nowhere else to turn." She reached into her bag and withdrew a check. "Consider this our investment in justice." The amount written on the check would ensure our clinic's operation for years to come. That evening, I brought the news and a bottle of champagne to my father's house. He listened as I explained the Richardson endowment, his eyes brightening with each detail. "You see," he said after I finished, "the universe has its own justice system." "How do you mean?" "The merger that Marcus wouldn't let you leave for, the one that ultimately failed, brought you the very thing you need to succeed." He chuckled. "Poetic, isn't it?" Later, as we sat in the same sunroom where he had revealed his plans for the clinic, my father grew serious. "I need to tell you something, Daniel. Something I should have said sooner." I set down my glass. "What is it?" I wasn't entirely truthful about why I bought that building. He adjusted his position, wincing slightly. "Before my stroke, I was diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. "Dad, the stroke came before the Alzheimer's could progress noticeably. Strange blessing that," he smiled wryly. "But I knew what was coming. I'd watched my own father disappear bit by bit. I couldn't bear the thought of you witnessing that while trapped in a job that was already taking you away from yourself. So the clinic was as much for you as for the community. I needed to know you'd be doing something that mattered to you when I could no longer remember what mattered to me." He reached for my hand. "Promise me something. Anything. When the time comes, and it will, stroke or Alzheimer's or simply old age, remember that a legacy isn't built in boardrooms. It's built in moments of choice. When you choose courage over convenience, purpose over profit." "I promise," I said, my voice thick. 1 year to the day after I walked out of Thornwick and Chen, I stood before a packed courtroom, representing a group of seniors fighting eviction from their longtime homes to make way for luxury condominiums. The developer was represented by none other than Marcus Chen himself. As I presented our case, I caught sight of my father sitting in the back row, leaning on his cane but sitting tall, watching with unmistakable pride. Beside him sat Judith Richardson, who had become not just our benefactor but a fierce advocate for our work. Marcus avoided my gaze throughout the proceedings, his focus entirely on his expensive leather portfolio and his team of 4 associates. When the judge ruled in our client's favor, granting an injunction that would protect their homes while the full case proceeded, the courtroom erupted in applause. My father's voice somehow carried above the rest. "That's my son." As the courtroom cleared, Marcus finally approached me. "Interesting career move, Daniel," he said, his tone carefully neutral. "I wouldn't have predicted this." "Neither would I, once upon a time." He glanced toward my father, who was chatting animatedly with Mrs. Richardson. "I hear he's doing well. The treatment worked." "It helped," I acknowledged. "He has good days and bad." Marcus nodded, seeming genuinely pleased. Then his gaze sharpened. "Judith Richardson has taken quite an interest in your little operation. She believes in equal access to justice." "As do we all," he replied smoothly. "In fact, Thornwick and Chen has been considering expanding our pro bono program. Perhaps there's room for collaboration." I studied the man who had once held such power over my professional life. "Are you offering a partnership, Marcus?" "An alliance. Your expertise, our resources. Think about it." He handed me his card, as if I didn't still have his number memorized. "I will," I said, though we both knew what my answer would be. My father joined me as Marcus departed, watching him weave through the crowd. What did he want? To offer a deal he knows I'll refuse, so he can tell himself he tried. Dad nodded approvingly. "You've learned well." He gazed around the emptying courtroom. "You know, I sat in courtrooms like this for 40 years, believing I was serving justice from the bench. But watching you today," he squeezed my shoulder. "This is justice too. Perhaps the kind that matters most." Outside the courthouse, our clients gathered around us, elderly men and women whose relief was palpable. Mrs. Diaz, their unofficial spokesperson at 87, clasped my hands in hers. "My husband and I worked our whole lives for that little apartment," she said, eyes bright with tears. "We raised our children there, celebrated 50 anniversaries there. How do you thank someone for saving your home?" "You don't need to thank me," I told her. "This is exactly why we exist." That night, as my father and I sat on his porch watching fireflies rise from the lawn, I realized something profound. In walking away from what I thought was success, I had stumbled into something far more valuable: purpose. My father seemed to read my thoughts. "When I was diagnosed," he said, "I was terrified of losing everything that made me who I am. My memories, my independence, my sense of purpose." He looked at me, his eyes clear and present. "But I've realized that the most important parts of us live on in what we create, in who we help, in the choices we make when everything is on the line." I thought about the clinic, about Mrs. Diaz and her neighbors, about the dozens of clients waiting for help, about Rachel and Miguel and Diana, who had chosen the same path, about how walking away from Thornwick and Chen had felt like an ending but had actually been a beginning. The price of legacy, my father continued, isn't measured in billable hours or corner offices. It's measured in the lives we touch, the wrongs we right, the courage we show when it would be easier to look away. A year ago, I had stood in Marcus Chen's office, believing I was sacrificing my future. Now I understood. I hadn't sacrificed a future. I had reclaimed it. "Thank you," I said simply, "for showing me what matters." My father smiled, reached for my hand, and together we watched as more fireflies rose from the gathering darkness, their light small but undeniable against the vast night.